Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 2019 edition of the Bizarre Briefing. I'm your host, Bryce Castillo, joined as always with Brant Hughes.
Hi, that's me.
And John Rael.
Hi.
This is the behind the scenes podcast where we talk all about what's going on here at Bizarre Magic Industries. Is it Industries? I don't think it's Industries.
No corporated?
It might be Inc. Is it Inc? It might be Inc.
It is possibly Inc, but it is definitely not the other one that you said.
It's Bizarre Magic, General Bizarre Magic. Is what we were. Hi, everybody. No, we do YouTube shows and podcasts, which you probably know because you are listening to this show. Shows like Scam Nation, Modern Rogue, Night Attack, Cord Killers, the store over at scamstuff.com. And we're going to touch on a little bit of everything this week here in this show, starting with an update. People have been asking for it. People are always asking for an update. We do have an update. You sent me some photos, John, I think today.
Yeah.
But also I was just there like 10 minutes before you sent them to me. So I actually had seen. So we have an equipment room that is very clean now. All of no one knows this, but there's a lot of boxes of sound baffling. All of those are now in the big space. So
I feel like an idiot for not taking a before picture.
Yeah, well, it's fine because no one else has seen it before either. So our equipment space is a little, labeled the desk and stuff is like kind of organized now, so it looks really nice in there. I'll tell you that. Good. Thank you very much for cleaning up.
You're welcome. Came together. I just got a real bug about like getting equipment in a space that's filled with boxes, and it was filled with those giant soundproof sound foam boxes.
Right.
And we were like, whenever we had to like load up our gear, it was all three of us like in that little corner between the boxes and the desk.
Yeah, it's a very tight space.
And I'm like, Brian, can I just move this stuff out of here? He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
It's not like we're really using that big room for anything else right now. So
yeah. And one other update on the house. I don't know if you saw this because I don't know how recent this was, but there's an area that when we use the inside house to shoot stuff in. We've shot some of the mailbag stuff in there. We shot the Rick Smith Jr. coin flipping video in there. We shot the necktie video for Modern Rogue in there. Sure. That's the kitchen area, quote unquote. Apparently so in that room, you don't see this a lot because we don't shoot this way, but there's an opening from that room to the hall in the front, right? Apparently they have put in a jamb for not even the jamb, just the frame of a doorway there.
Oh, huh.
And it's very small.
Yeah.
It's I think it's
like a little hobbit hole.
Like I think it's probably the size of a normal door, but we've had no frame there, just a complete opening with like I don't know, 5 or 6 feet wide maybe. Where this is now going to be. I don't think there will be a door installed. I think there's like a sliding door idea going on, but I was there and Brian just happened to be there at the same time and we talked it out a little bit because we have like those workbenches that we use.
Regular door size is not going to work for a production facility.
Right. And I don't know how often we'll shoot in that space in the long term, but now we're using that space certainly. And there's a workbench in there right now. So that's an update. They've put new flooring. They got rid of the tiles. I don't know if they got rid of the flooring. They must have gotten rid of the tiles and refloored it. But there's something on the floor now there, and they're starting to work on the inside of the house because my understanding is that they need to very, very soon.
Yeah.
So that's the house update, but also.
I was going to say another update. The warehouse has lights,
right,
and a roof and walls. I don't think it had like.
And there's a warehouse.
There's a warehouse.
Yeah, there's a warehouse. So if you saw the Desperate Events videos, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we shot those on the concrete slab that is where they built the warehouse, the new warehouse. It's a prefabbed.
Sorry, the barn.
Is that what we're calling it?
I mean, I'm gonna call it the warehouse, but Brian is calling it the barn.
Oh, interesting. I've not heard the barn yet, but okay. So the barn.
Please, the warehouse.
The concrete slab that we shot Desperate Defense. That's the space where we shot where the warehouse is now. And it took a while for them to actually get everything and install it there. We filmed multiple episodes in it before it was completed, but now there's electricity in there. Now there's doors. Now there's what is it? The big garage doors there. So it seems like it is a mostly completed structure.
Yeah,
At least externally.
Yeah,
he's got insulation, so the sound's not too bad in there.
the sound is very nice in there. And I think the next step is kind of getting the current warehouse out of the warehouse that we're renting and moving it over to this space. But so we'll kind of see. That'll be there was talk that might be a whole group effort in terms of moving stuff, but
Well, we definitely need like a room within the warehouse for air conditioning purposes.
Well, so the warehouse is going to have a second level.
eventually.
Yeah, which it sounded like Brian wanted that to be done as soon as reasonably possible, which who knows what that'll mean. But yeah, I think there's still some level of construction that needs to happen inside. I don't know if that'll happen before or after stuff gets moved over.
Well, the real kind of comedy of them doing the warehouse at all prior to the house is that the house is the thing that
needs to be done.
Yeah.
There is a kind of deadline on that.
little contractor trick for you. Do the peripheral stuff and then get to the necessary stuff, because that way your customers will have to pay you for both.
Yeah. So that's kind of an update on the physical land of the warehouse. I don't think there are any other updates. We did shoot in this cleared off space that was set aside for the septic system last weekend.
Right.
We'll talk about that shoot in a little bit, but we finally used that space. There is definitely, so it's like a pipe system for the septic tank, and so I think there's runoff, or I think that is some sort of output for the septic system. Because when we were shooting there, I definitely saw just like, because the grass is only starting to come in, or it's very light right now, and there is definitely like a huge brown patch on the ground that made me go, oh, this is some shit land, huh? There's gonna be some poopy
It's
ground.
called fertile.
Well,
I didn't notice that.
yeah, I did.
But we
notice
saw
that,
a
I didn't see the
bunny.
smell. And we did see a bunny. That's right. There is apparently video footage of a bunny.
And a lot of little frogs and all sorts of creatures.
Yeah, nature, the bounty of nature. I'll at Monterey headquarters. So that's an update for the physical spot of HQ. We do have another update here. Or this is not an update. This is kind of a tease, because David is not here. And
What?
that's right. So we're going to have to fill in for him at the end of the show too. But this is the part of the show where we would talk a little bit about the store. But there's not too much to say except, well, let me see his Slack message so I can know how much I can talk about this, because I mean, we're recording the show on Tuesday. I think this thing is starting tomorrow. So I want to make sure that
We don't want to break any NDAs or exclusives. Or
okay, so he says that we can mention that we're doing it in a couple days. Okay, so a couple days from now, which will be a few days from now, a few days in the past, at least if you're hearing the podcast version of this app or of this show, we're doing another mystery box campaign. Woo! That's right, we're doing a mystery box campaign. So we did one earlier this year, and that was only $100 mystery boxes, is my understanding. And so now this new round will be $40 boxes. So they're a little more affordable. And they're, if you don't know the mystery box campaign, the idea is that you give us this amount of money and we will send you a box guaranteed to be worth way more than the value of what you paid for it. So in the past, it's been puzzle boxes, decks of cards, lockpick trainers, all sorts of good stuff. And it's satisfaction guaranteed. So
a lot of stuff that exists on the store, right?
yes, it is. Yes, mostly it is stuff that is on the website.
Okay.
I have to make sure we say the word mostly there, because I think there's something special in this one.
Okay.
But yeah, it's generally the stuff that you'll find at scamstuff.com. And it seems to be a big hit, and we're back with the new sort of more affordable one coming up, and we're kind of the promotional wave of this campaign is a little in flux right now. It's a little fluid. We're going to do an ad integration on Scam Nation. Ad integration. We're doing an ad break for it.
Right.
And that's our first time that's certainly our first time like just injecting our own promo for something in a Scam Nation video. But I also don't think we've ever just like done an ad break even in Scam School for the stuff that we've done. Like we've always had, because we've had domain.com advertisements for so long.
Right.
And that would relegate a lot of stuff to like the very end of the video, usually in the stand-ups at the end, which usually were, you know, that's the part of the video that the least amount of people see.
Sure. So
this will be it'll be a pretty traditional ad read in that Scam Nation video. And then I don't know, talking about Brian had some ideas to do some Periscope streams on Twitter. And they might whip up something for the Scam Stuff channel. I don't know. We're kind of feeling it out because there are only so many boxes and we don't want to overdo it for however many boxes there are. So that's kind of being a balancing thing. I think I hope David can talk a little bit more about this after in the next episode of the show. Once kind of we're out of the wake of this campaign. But that's who is it that we were talking to, who is like a YouTuber. I think I might be stealing the story from Brian. I'm almost certainly stealing the story from Brian, but he was talking to someone who was a YouTuber, and when people ask what they do for a living, that YouTuber that Brian was talking to said, "Oh, I'm in advertising," because with whether it's the brand deals that people do, integrations, sponsored content, advertising is certainly, at least in the YouTube stuff that we do, a significant portion of how those shows get on the air.
It's definitely a component.
Yeah. So that's a little
sounds fancier. Sounds much more adult.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was talking to, I won't go into too much detail, but I was talking to someone today about a thing from in another business, or in the same business as ours, but in a different company, about a thing that he was looking for help with, and we're a very like I don't know, small operation, right? I mean, the three of us are the production part of this, 5-6 person company.
Right.
But to talk to this other person who was like, well, I need this position of person and this position of person and this position of person. It's like, well, we kind of do a bunch of different stuff. So it's kind of puts into perspective a little bit just how scrappy we kind of are in the grand scope of production work.
Yeah, we are a set of one-man bands,
right?
know?
Yeah,
which is what I'm used to.
Yeah, and I'm sure that is much more common, especially nowadays. But I mean,
sure.
Even stuff like the titles and stuff, like we don't have a gaffer, right? We don't have a grip. We have 3 people who move tables when we need.
We have 3 best boys.
That's right.
Oh, sorry.
So talking a little bit about production, I think this was since the last episode we shot of this program here. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we did. So since the last episode, we've had Rick Smith Jr. out, world record card thrower. He's had a couple episodes of Modern Rogon. We had him out here in Austin to shoot a couple of videos for Scam Nation, and both of those episodes have gone up now. And wow. I'm happy with how they came out, because they were very difficult to shoot. I think John was there with me on that day.
Yeah.
And it was pretty difficult. So the first episode that came out was the coin flip cheat. So the idea is like you can do Rick's technique, and you can control what side a coin.
You really caught it, man.
Yeah. So what he's talking about here is some slow-mo footage of Rick actually doing the effect. We used the slow motion on the GH5s to capture it, and it took a while to get, because it's such a fast and small thing. And I think for both of the videos, this and a video about card throwing for distance, it was a needle in a haystack the entire time.
Yeah. And a golfing videographer.
Yeah. Especially the card throwing one. I'm really surprised. So let me take this in order, right? So the coin flip one, that was the second video of the 2 that we actually shot that day. And I know, like, I was I was super afraid from the first shoot because it was raining and I had no idea if I was actually capturing any good footage of the cards being thrown. And so even though we went inside and we actually are shooting this in the kitchen space that we talked about, it was a super difficult challenge because it's like, well, how do you light it so that you can see the coin in the air? How do you light it so that, you know, they still look okay as, you know, human beings? How do we light with the background and stuff? And I think it came out good. The one thing I would have like being in the edit for this video, the one thing I would have had us do again is look at the lighting, because in the opening and the end clips here of the video, you see them do this unbroken shot of him controlling the coin flip, and it took us it took like 10 or so tries to get it, just because the difficult portion of us getting it was them just stopping and showing it to the camera.
Sure.
Because when you're in the person, you're following it, you can see it, you register it, and to the camera, it was very difficult to make sure we had even a frame of it. But in the video footage, and you could probably tell, you don't need to be an eagle-eyed person to tell, but there is a lot of color correction going on to make the result of the flip very very visible. So for most of these flips in the beginning and the end, they are actually tracked masks with the contrast turned way up, because there was no light on it to reflect into the coin.
Sure.
And so I was worried about it looking fake, but it legitimately isn't fake. It is the actual it's the actual image data, but it's just the contrast is turned up. But I was super concerned that it would look fake because the lighting isn't right. It's not that bright, it's not that vibrant for the coin, but you need it so that people know what's going on. So I think that was the one thing during shooting that I was like, if we had them do it and checked it, we could have seen that we needed a light, you know, on the axis of the camera high up so it would reflect on there. But otherwise, I think it did come out good. The other thing which was on me is the wide shot. I think because we were out in the rain for so long, and then we came inside where there was a lot of heat, the master shot definitely was like fogged up on the inside of the lens. And so it was like, once we were done shooting, I like actually popped the lens off so to release the humidity, and then it looked fine. But that was like a color correction sort of thing, because you just lose detail, like the lighting gets kind of blurry, and so so I think that one came out well. And then the other one on throwing for distance was also like its own troubles because of an error when we were shooting. The way we shot it was not too dissimilar to the way we would shoot stuff now, but where, you know, we shoot the content of the episode and then we do pickups and stuff, but as they were doing pickups, they were doing like a lot of voiced segments. They were like doing like more content basically after they had wrapped. And I guess there was an issue with the audio where by that point the audio had stopped. And so we only had 20 minutes of audio for this 40-minute shoot. And it ended up being fine because at least we had the audio from the bit where they do the ending, and you know, it ended up not being as big of a deal. But it was a thing where I started the edit process and I was looking at, like, you know, I don't know if this detail shot really got footage of them throwing the cards, like the mat, you know, it's a thing that I was just like, it was like, this is a pretty short video, and not it was kind of a hurdle there, but I think it ended up coming out pretty nice. We were using some graphics. We were able to kind of heighten some of the ability to follow the cards, just with a basic like shape layer, and then manually tracking it to eat frame by frame to where the card is. Yeah,
it reminded me a lot of the Nerf dart video we did on Modern Rogue.
Remind me of that one. Was that a while ago?
Yeah, so that was Bill Duran, like the first set of videos we did with him when he came into town, and then we modified the Nerf gun to shoot further.
Oh, right, and we shot it in the back on the street.
Yeah,
and I guess you had locked it off, and so you had ghosted the trail or something. Was that right?
So for the interior stuff, I ghosted the trail, sort of, and then I sort of tracked the path. But for the exterior stuff, it was kind of a similar thing. I think it's in like the first third of the video or so.
Okay.
Where it's like circles to follow the follow stuff as well, and it's also a difficult thing of like, oh man, I don't know if any of this is on video because it's just these little tiny things being shot 50 feet or whatever.
Yeah, the detail is so small, and thankfully, I think people will trust graphics like these.
Sure.
But it's when you're in the edit, it's very much just like I hope that we got it, and so I had a little bit of that. There's also some fudging going on just with the shot selection of the throws. There were some where you have I couldn't follow it, right? Like the cards are kind of going off to the left or off to the right in such a way. And so there's Rick has a big throw in this video where it's like, oh my God, it's, I have to go in and track it. And that follow clip of it is definitely like is definitely a different throw that was also similarly impressive, but we actually could see it at least going off into the woods.
Right.
Because it was a very like unscientific sort of thing. But I feel good that they came out well. Because it was just like kind of weighing on me a little bit.
Yeah. I understand that.
Well, they definitely look solid though.
Thank you. Yeah, and So this is a good transition into this other topic. This is a bit of a follow up to what we talked about last episode about Scam Nation and shooting in a different way. So we talked about normally we do a 3-camera shoot with a master shot and 2 side detail shots, just so that we always know that we have a reliable center shot that we can cut back to, while the detail shots are focusing on faces or on table stuff. And with the previous shoot of Scam Nation for the puzzle videos, we had one of those come out since the last episode of the show with the 2 fuse video. And by the way, the Annalisa in this episode is the Annalisa we were talking about the last couple of episodes
and
here.
The Annalisa in the chat.
And in the chat, that's right. And this actually ended up being good. So if you didn't catch that last episode, we changed it up a little bit in having 2 more locked down face shots. So a Brian camera just focusing on Brian, a wider side camera just focusing on the guests of the video here, and then one camera kind of floating, either doing face detail shots or table shots. And that actually came out really, really nice. It was very, I think it's a bigger value than it sounds on paper to have real-time cutaways. Especially when it's like table stuff like this, like at a table, on the table, and people are interacting with stuff in time. And so like editing this was actually a pretty big, there was a pretty good benefit to having that versus trying to do a million pickups, because I don't even think we did many pickups at all on that entire shoot. But it made me feel good about that whole shoot, and we've got another one of these coming up this week, which is another one where we had the detail shot instead of the master shot. So I might have more to report on this next episode, but overall, like I think I feel really good about having done that way. I don't think that's going to be for every time we shoot, but I think that was a good call, or an okay. I can live with that, I guess.
Right.
I don't know if it's the best call, but
sure,
it was. I feel good about it.
It was not a disaster.
Right. What also wasn't a disaster.
Hold on, before we move on, can I take it back for just 1 second?
Absolutely.
I just remembered when we first were gonna have Rick Smith Jr. in town.
For Modern Rogue?
Yeah, I remembered hearing that we knew somebody who had like a big open hangar And I was like, hey, maybe we should shoot all of this stuff in a big open hangar. It'd be really easy to track all of the cards and everything.
And if you ever watch any of Rick's videos, they're in stadiums or in hangars and stuff. His world record throw was in a stadium.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we ended up not doing that because it's like, well, we got a warehouse, so let's just shoot here.
Yeah.
And then for this shoot, you guys decided to throw it in the middle of a bunch of trees.
Okay. So hold on. Okay.
Do you at least think it would have been a lot easier?
Oh, absolutely. It would have been a lot easier if we were in a hangar. That was a part of that shoot that I felt really bad for, especially because I cut it out of the edit because obviously I would, but they kept going like, oh, well, these trees are in the way. We got to throw to get rid of this. And I picked that spot. I picked that spot on that day because I was like, oh, we have a long cleared out avenue.
Sure. And
all they have to do is throw it straight, which there were trees overhanging also that are difficult to tell in that shot. So that is a difficulty there. But also there are not many other better spots to have done that.
Not at HQ.
Right.
No.
Though it did make me think that that probably actually would have been something even at the stunt ranch or something where they just have a ton of open space. At least they are not being inhibited by a bunch of trees and things.
Sure.
Though I will say the trees made it a lot easier to fake the footage or to use different shots.
Probably.
So, yeah. It was a hangar would have been nice.
I'm just if we ever get him back for more videos that involve distance of cards or accuracy of cards, maybe we should find a spot that's just wide open.
Can we just clear out a portion of the HQ and just have it be
just
a large
bulldoze those trees?
Yeah, paved paradise, put a parking lot.
Great.
But yeah.
And we'll just call that the card throwing arena.
But I mean, there's a lot of times where we would have benefited from having a large flat open space. I mean,
sure.
We did the desperate defense on that slab, and granted the slab was bright white because it was the middle of the day.
Jesus.
But it was nice to have a dedicated, even going into the warehouse while it's empty, it was pretty nice to have a lot of space to work in. And it makes me think that wouldn't it be nice to have some cleared off lot, because we even use the patio a lot because it's kind of paved. It has a little bit of coverage.
I mean,
but
theoretically,
not the best coverage.
That is hopefully what the big room in the house will be when it's not covered in echoey drywall.
I don't know because I keep hearing that Modern Rogue will now shoot in the warehouse instead of inside the actual house. And now in the short term, that makes sense because the warehouse is done and it sounds pretty good in there.
And because David just misses us being in his workspace at all times so much.
No, that's the thing. Is
let's just store all of our equipment in your workspace so that way we can use it once every 2 weeks or once every week.
So I don't know. Until that big room is done, it just seems like anything can happen.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I guess have to happen until that happens. So
a
hangar would be nice. Though I think it sounded like that hangar was kind of out of town.
Oh.
So, but even still.
Yeah.
There's
probably someplace local that's just here's just empty space.
Yeah.
You would think.
You would think.
It's Texas.
Or
if we got one thing, it's space.
Or even just there are certainly venue halls. But venue hall, I'm trying to think of there are times when it would be good to have a lot of space, but then there are times when you need a ton of space. And I think this card throwing thing was a ton of space sort of thing, right?
Sure.
I mean, that was, 100 plus feet at least. And that was with, trees obstructing the way and raining in the middle of it. So I don't know. Yes.
Brian loves making friends. We should just find some place that has tons of space and be
make friends with whoever owns the airport.
Yep. There you go. Traffic control.
There we go.
Make friends with them.
Yeah. We need to clear out. We got a shoot coming in.
Yep.
That's how they talk.
Yep.
So speaking of the air.
What?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of the air, we had a new Modern Rogue video go up. And John, you edited it.
I did.
This was more of the word challenge is in the title, which I think is a good description of what is going on here. Can you describe it for the folks, John?
Yeah, it's it's one of those what I might describe as a drunken bar bet. Like, let's do the lightsaber thing and, put the blast shield on and let's just swing it. Let's use drones. Let's fight drones with lightsabers, which is frankly awesome. And they had a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we were shooting it in the big room. And so the sound was terrible.
Was not great, yeah.
But it was Star Wars. It was lightsabers. And so I got the chance to, have a lot of fun with the graphics. Although I feel, like, Yeah. Because it's one of those diminishing return kind of things.
Oh, right. Because you spent a lot of time on the graphics.
Spent a lot of time on it. And and not a single person ever mentioned the fact that you can kind of see through Brian.
Sure.
Like, even though he's there in the footage, I managed to do some cool trickery so you could see through him.
It looked like you're actually seeing through him, not just like...
And of course, I'm sure anybody watching it was like, oh, green screen. Like, no, never mind. Fuck it.
So here's the thing. I don't want to put you totally on blast, but I do want to understand a very specific thing.
Okay.
The lightsabers. There's a very specific way to do lightsabers. Okay.
Visually, as a visual effect.
Yeah. And this also goes to talking about how audiences aren't discerning at all, because nobody commented on this, but this is like the one thing that super stood out to me.
Motion blur.
The motion blur is very specific on lightsabers, right? So canonically, and I don't know how this makes any sense.
Okay.
Right. So the way motion blur works, right? Let's say you have like a 1 second exposure and I move my arm like this. Okay. So you'll see the arm smear across the frame as it's exposed to the sensor.
Yeah.
And there'll be a little bit of transparency because when my arm is over here, the background that was obstructed is now bouncing light off of it and hitting the sensor. So you get a double exposure of the thing that's moving and the thing that's behind it.
Sure.
But with lightsabers, theoretically, they're so bright that at all times they are overexposing the sensor. So if you move a lightsaber from here, from your 12 o'clock position to your 9 o'clock position or whatever, it fully exposes the sensor in that entire arc of motion. So when it shows up on that frame, you get like a block of white over that whole motion arc because it's like overexposed, or exposed to clipping.
Sure.
See, I totally misunderstood what you were saying when you slacked me on that. I was like, oh, I guess there's absolutely no motion blur.
No.
It's but what you're saying is that the
there
motion blur
be
is like
strong
100%.
Yeah, it's like it's smears of light basically. Right. I would be interested to hear how it evolved to that, because there are some moments in Star Wars where it's not fully clipped to white early on, but it became canonical that's just how you do lightsabers.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a thing that stuck out to me, and I was curious about that. And also, like, sometimes the glow is a little strong in the blue, and I feel like it's blended kind of strange. But again, these are all things that nobody commented about. So as much as it pains me, they don't care.
Now, I know it took you a long time to edit this because the rotoscoping process on the actual lightsaber scene with Jason was so intensive, right? Like, you rotoscoped Brian out and you do the lightsaber bit. Like, what percentage of that edit time was just, doing that hand painting?
That was like 80% easily. And the other hard work that went into this, got to give a shout out to Anthony Shea, the musician, for doing a bunch of little sound-alikes. Like, because I did the first rough cut of this video with actual Star Wars music.
Okay.
And then I sent it to my musician friend, and I'm like, hey, take this little piece, that little piece, and that little piece, and make them into not the Star Wars.
Oh, to make them sound like sound-alikes?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Make sound-alikes.
I feel like I didn't get that vibe out of them, or like I just remember like hearing the music cue, and I know you had mentioned that you had your friend provide them, and I don't know, they felt not bad, but they were different enough that I was like, oh, this is a different aesthetic. But I'll have to listen to it again because I don't watch Modern Rogue very much. But
yeah, well, you also aren't like super big Star Wars,
right? I also
either.
do not know Star Wars at all, so that could have all been.
It felt evocative enough.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Of the Star Wars.
It was a strange thing because when he sent them to me, I'm like, when I first listened to him, I'm like, I think he got this wrong, and then I listened to the original. I'm like, no, that's the same exact thing.
Okay.
It just doesn't. It's weird. Like the moment you take out a little element, it's like, oh, that's not Star Wars.
Yeah. Because it's, and just like even shuffle it, even if you have all the same pieces, if you shuffle them enough.
Yeah. Oh, and also I made him like, because once I noticed that, I'm like, well, since it's already not Star Wars, I want you to take those exact things you did and add Stranger Things. And he's like, what? I'm like, just do it. Just Thor, Ragnarok, Stranger Things. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. So that video went up now. The blind lightsaber challenge, blindfold Jedi challenge.
I guess that's what we called it.
Yep.
We didn't really lean into the whole May the 4th thing. Because we released it on May the 3rd, and for the record, the highest percentage of all comments was, man, you guys really missed out not releasing it on May the 4th. I'm like, but we got it in before time. We got that.
And also, we always post on Friday.
Yeah, it's like a Friday thing anyway. And also, like, even if we had done that for the title, I don't think that's such a like in the moment title where we probably would have changed it to something like this by now.
Yeah. And that would have been fine. Yeah. But no, people were like, "Oh, you missed out." I'm like, Christmas movies don't come out on Christmas.
Well,
like, how do
leave? Yeah. But you're right. It's like you want to be ahead of it.
Yeah.
And it's the most ahead of any like prank we've ever been in terms of like trying to keep stuff timely.
Yeah, and you wanted to get a little bit of traction before the day that it's supposed to be relevant.
Right.
Like for instance, our getting high without drugs video or hallucinating without drugs video. That went up April like 15th or something.
Really? Oh
yeah, so it was like right before April 20th.
420, yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised that was an element in its trajectory.
I wonder. It probably was because that kind of took off. Yeah, I bet it probably did. I bet it's probably because so much of what drives like people watching stuff online is like the freest thing that kids can do.
Sure.
Like we've talked on Cord Killers about Pluto. I don't know if you know Pluto.tv. I think Viacom just bought them, but it is legitimately just a free website that has channels of things. And so some stuff is like stuff that has been pulled from YouTube or partner deals or Viral Hog or whatever, but also like Viacom owns it now. So they're going to do not copies of their like broadcast channels, but channels of like, here's the Real World channel. Here's the like Cribs channel. And so you go there and it's going to be free / ad supported or something. And I think the guys on the show not poo-pooed it, but I think they're hesitant on it. But I think the fact that it's free is such a big deal for minors, especially, who don't have credit cards or whatever. Like it's why YouTube is such a big thing.
Sure.
Because it's just free, and I where was I going with this? What were we even talking about? I've completely lost the thread.
Free stuff, weed,
information wants
hallucination.
Oh, but okay. So yes, back to the hallucinations thing.
Okay.
Because if you're a kid and you don't have access to weed, what would you do? How to get high without weed? How to hallucinate without weed or whatever? And if you see something like that, then you might try it. You might do it and see what works. I don't know if that's exactly what the Pruno thing, if that's a thing with the Pruno episode also, which also did kind of blow up at the time.
Sure.
I don't know.
Your kids are addicted to listening to white noise. Here's 5 ways how you can tell.
What their acronyms mean. LOL is lots of light.
Yep.
I got a small pop quiz for any listeners out there.
Oh, please.
On the one hand, information wants to be free. Does anybody know what the other hand is? That's usually one the internet forgets. Because it's a very famous quote. The guy said, on the one hand, information wants to be free, and everybody took that and ran with it. That's like the mantra of the internet. Mm-hmm. And the other hand is all about how it can't be free because it's valuable and it costs and it makes people money and it generates revenue. And like, so it was like this balance that he was talking about.
I thought it was one hand in my pocket and the other one making a peace sign.
No. Not
That's the quote that I remember.
and really, history is defined by the people who remember it. So,
yep, that's our true legacy.
Speaking of legacies,
nice.
A new Modern Rogue video has come out. Brant, is this the longest Modern Rogue video of all time?
Yes,
it is.
Oh wow!
So this is another
by a pretty significant margin, by like 7 minutes or something.
Oh my goodness! This is a new video with our friends over at HEMA, the Historical Weapons Guild. That's what HEMA stands for. No, it doesn't. But this is all about fencing with rapiers, and I just remember reading your Slack messages around the time when we were doing other stuff, and you're just like, "This is so dense. I can't cut anything, or if I start cutting stuff, I'm going to be cutting information."
Yeah, there's definitely a point to where we like all got together for an ad shoot, and I was just like, I don't know if this goes below an hour. Right. And I eventually got it there, just barely.
It's 52 minutes 14 seconds.
Yeah, that was an interesting one because it was super dense and there was a lot of information to go around. Mm-hmm. And you know, sometimes the Historical Weapons Guild videos end up being a little bit fatty with just me showing Brian and Jason practicing because that ends up being a big portion of the video.
Right. And that's not to denigrate anything, but them flailing around and figuring stuff out, or like playing around at the end where they're like actually fighting, mm-hmm. is where a lot of the character comes out.
Sure.
Right. Like that's where their personality mixes into the video. Mm-hmm. And so like it's a very similar thing with Scam School and Scam Nation is like if there's a block where people are learning or are trying to learn it, that's where like very organic questions come up of like, well, you didn't know about this. This is what other people will probably have questions about. Mm-hmm. And so especially with the physical stuff, that comes up a lot, right? Like, especially when we're shooting, I can just see them, and it's because I'm not doing it and not in there, but I can see them doing the thing that they're, being told not to do, or you see them slip on one thing after about 10 minutes or so. So there's definitely like an observer's bias on some of that stuff.
Yeah. But in this particular video, I basically got to a point where I was like, this is so long. I'm going to cut out almost all of the jokes.
Wow.
I'm going to cut out almost all of the practicing, and it's just going to be them going through it. And it's just going to be like lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson.
Wow.
So that's mostly what it came down to. And it's funny because I feel like we got more comments on this than most episodes where people were like, I appreciate that you guys just like, took it seriously and didn't tell very many jokes or anything. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not the real experience.
No.
Well, I gotta say the video did go by quickly.
Yeah. There's
like it didn't feel long. Yeah,
there was always something happening, which makes it compress in your mind because you're like, oh, I remember all of these things. Yeah. Sort of like Endgame or whatever, where it's like people were like, oh no, a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
And then you watch it and it's like, dude, there's always something happening.
Yeah.
So it goes by a little bit faster than you might expect.
Did you have any thoughts of maybe breaking this up because it was so long?
So I had a couple of people mention that to me as I was editing it.
Yeah.
And there's a world in which that were the case. But for me personally, I don't think it would make a ton of sense. Maybe if we shot it in a way that it was like, okay, so we're going to do these elements of fencing with rapiers, and then these elements of fencing with rapiers, and then maybe like categorically they fit into their own thing. So that way we could have separate videos that are on different topics of the same subject.
Sure. Which we've done in the general sense before, right?
Yeah. Like a great example is the whiskey videos.
Sure.
Right. We have like 3 whiskey videos and they're all about the same subject, but they're about different elements of that subject.
Yeah.
So I could see something like that if it was designed into it from the production, like pre-production perspective. Yeah. And then it flowed through all the way to post-production and publishing. But as it was, I think it would be a weird thing to be like, to cut it off at a certain point, and then people watch the video and it's a long video but not as long of a video, and then they get to the end and they're like, okay, well, where's the rest? It just kind of ends in a weird way. And you know, there's a weird thing of, okay, well, maybe you'll have to wait longer for the video if it's all one thing, because I've still got to do all that work.
Yeah.
But I managed to get it in the week. I think a big thing that helped, and the reason this didn't feel like such a Goliath edit as something like the lemon stun gun video or something else like that, is that this was so deeply structured.
Yeah.
That I found it really helpful to. I put a bunch of title cards in there because I wanted to like formally and officially break up the video. And so I was able to say, okay, here's a 5-minute segment on the stances that they could take. And so it's like, okay, well, I can just focus on these 5 minutes. I don't have to worry about any of the rest of the video. I can just focus on, you know, doing multiple passes on these 5 minutes until these 5 minutes really shine and are good to go. And then I could kind of do that for every segment. Whereas a lot of our videos, it's like, it all just kind of is a continuous flowing of events happening.
Sure.
So it's really hard to say, okay, well, let me just focus on this little area here.
Yeah.
So usually what ends up happening is I do the whole thing in big sweeping passes and it just gets smaller and smaller. And then I switch from a macroscopic view to a microscopic view when I do the audio processing. So then I basically pay attention to the video at, you know, half-second intervals or whatever. And then I can really fine-tune some of the cuts and transitions and some of the things that happen on that really small scale. Whereas the macroscopic view, I can figure out, okay, this whole segment of video doesn't work. This stuff needs to be here. This stuff doesn't need to be here, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I was able to get more granular with it and keep... Like I could have the macroscopic view of the edit, and then I could have somewhere in between the macroscopic and the microscopic.
Sure. And also, you know, as far as like this shoot went, I mean, it was kind of it was on the longer side of shoots, but also it wasn't troubled the way like the lemon stunt gun was.
Right.
Right. Like that was like, what do we even make of this in the moment? Where this was just, they showed us a lot of stuff and we went through a lot of stuff. And so you can generally take it, you know, as it is.
But they had like a guided syllabus basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is how they teach people these things before, right? Like they always talk about different manuals that have been, you know, passed down for hundreds of years. So I think as far as and this is kind of a difficult, this is like a difference in the videos that we make and like, you know, going to their classes is like real instruction takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. And it's very like visceral and it helps a lot to have someone in the moment with you, right? Like, oh no, your foot, your foot's not right, or, you know, any number of things.
Sure.
And, you know, that's why, you know, it takes longer than 52 minutes to learn how to do, you know, how to fence with a rapier. But in terms of like making a video out of that, you have to like just take a net and get what you can, like, because it's not a training video, right? If it was a training video, it would have been 5 hours of stuff and each thing would have been its own 30-minute segment or something. Like it would have been much more expanded on, and all, there's I don't know. It's not an easy thing. I think it's something when we shoot that more than Brian or Jason, because I think they've kind of figured it out. But sometimes the instructors get lost in being instructors and not necessarily presenters.
Sure.
I know that whether it's like turning their back to the cameras to focus on the guys, or what, like it's there's a membrane that things have to pass through for us to film stuff well. And that is sometimes is counter to instruction, but I think like the HEMA guys and all of these historical weapons videos tend to be like really well suited for this type of video.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was not their first rodeo.
Oh, for sure.
And by the way, those are some big men.
Yeah, they're tall and built guys.
They gave us all a hug, and those are big guys.
Yeah, well, especially after when they're all sweaty after filming for 2 hours. So that episode was like 52 plus minutes. Do you think that's the upper limit of?
I don't want to see any videos longer than that. Sure. That's for sure. But then again, I didn't want to see any videos longer than 45 or 48 minutes, whatever the last record high was.
Yeah.
I think that was a very unique case of having a ton of information and having no easy way to distill it, because so many of those elements build off of one another that you kind of just, if you lose any one of those, then it all kind of falls apart.
Yeah. And I think in the past, with some of the other sword technique videos, I think they've intentionally not taught them parts of the manuals or parts of the technique. I think just to keep it, understandable for, like, you wouldn't learn everything in your first lesson of those things anyway. Right. But I think this was kind of a deviation from that from them, because normally I feel like they normally say like, oh, you don't need to worry about X, Y, or Z. Where here they kind of went through all the rules and went through every bit, mostly, except for the one that they kind of skip over.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that is influenced by the source material. If maybe the manuscripts for some of the other weapons were less rigidly structured as this one, because I went through and found like the original text of the Fabris manuscript that we used for this, because there's one dude who had like photographs taken of his original edition of it. Wow. And it's just like really gorgeous stuff. But like it is just basically the same as the video, like really structured, and it follows all of these things. And yeah, so I wonder
if that manual's newer, because some of the ones that we've read, or some of the ones that they've used before, are like medieval time.
I mean, this one was 1610, 1605, something like that. So not terribly new.
Certainly not like new, but probably.
But also, yeah, like some of the longsword stuff is probably like 1300s or something.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to get at is movable type and people printing books as commodities. I don't know.
Yeah, and I just wonder if maybe like some of that sword stuff is like less of a whole system and more of techniques for certain circumstances, and they're like, well, we'll just teach you these scenarios and these circumstances for these techniques and stuff.
Yeah. We've got a question here in chat, kind of piggybacking on my previous question. Do you ever think we would get a 1.5 or 2 hour video?
Not in 1 week.
Well, that's the problem, is it takes a long time to produce the videos, right? It takes a long time to edit them, especially if they're long shoots.
Yeah, a 50-minute video that took me a 60-hour work week or something. Right. And if you expect a video every Friday, like that's not sustainable. Right. And so it's we put out 2 hour long videos just about every week. They're called first pass edits. Sure. And they require almost like very minimal editing. So, a highly polished produced video like that for Modern Rogue as a tentpole end of the week release, I would have to take a week or two off and also people wouldn't watch it. People have had a tough enough time watching a 50-minute video or a 40-minute video.
Sure.
And while I think that rapier video is really phenomenal for what it is, like I think it's probably our best produced long video, and like best structured long video, but yeah, some people just can't make it through. So
yeah, but it seems to be doing really well.
True.
And everybody has,
especially as far as HEMA goes, because HEMA videos kind of underperform a little bit on average.
Yeah, and everybody has 24 hours a day to fill. That's why like so many like Netflix produced programs just like eke, like Orange is the New Black, like that last season, like every episode, I swear to God, was 3 hours long.
Wow. And those were like actually long, like they yeah, but I get what you're saying, right? Like there are some, because I know for me, I sometimes just feel like I have seen everything that is good out there. I just like, I want to watch something on YouTube and I'm either gonna have to rewatch something I've already seen, or where are people making really good stuff, because there's so much stuff out there, but a lot of it is just, not my speed, not my style, or just bad. There's a lot of bad stuff out there too.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to whip it up in a whim.
I also think a big limiting factor is Brian and Jason kind of just don't have it in them to go on about a topic in a dense enough capacity to fill an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right.
Like most of our videos, they're 15 minutes because that's what they got. It takes them a while to figure out how to make something work, and then either they do or they don't, and then that's it. Right. So doing some big long thing, like I just
especially if it's led by them.
Yeah.
Because like the HEMA guys could go on forever.
Probably.
Because they know all about all of these things, right? But not if it's Brian and Jason leading.
Yeah, I mean, the literal point of us is we're not the experts. Aspirational filmmaking.
I mean, if we ever did the what is that, the Halloween seance thing?
Oh, sure.
I could see that being that long, because if that's live streamed, which I don't see that happening, but if it were that, this is
a long promised video. If people are not aware, to do some sort of pay-per-view / live stream / event thing about doing a seance and breaking down seances, but also having it come out in time for Halloween, not necessarily during.
Anyway, if we did a thing like that, that would be fundamentally a different type or different style of video than the highly cut down, polished and produced Modern Rogue video that goes out every week. So something like that is more viable as a really long video. But we just don't do those too terribly often.
That's right. Well, one thing that we have done before and did just do, Brant.
Speaking of short videos, this past week it was Desperate Defense, which is now apparently an annual thing, it sounds like.
At least right now.
It's certainly the second annual Desperate Defense. How about that?
Sure.
The second Desperate Defense in 2 years. That's what we got.
I like that description. Yeah.
So if people missed these are a Modern Rogue series of videos about ways you can use everyday objects to defend yourself from these have all been from a single literary source, but I guess technically it could just be from any source, any instructional source.
Sure.
But we had 4 go up. Last year, was it also 4?
Yes.
So we had 4 more go up this past week. How was it? Because those are also, that's a very difficult thing to spend a whole week with, 4 back-to-back deadlines on, even if they're shorter videos, like this is an 8-minute video, like that's still a lot of video to put out, have out in a day, and then turn around another video the next day. And last year you were kind of doing everything hand to mouth and just like killing yourself to do everything in that week. How much did you get done ahead of time?
So for this one, I got 2 of them mostly done by the start of the week.
Okay.
So the first one was totally done except for the ad, because all of the ad stuff ended up being super last minute anyway. So I couldn't render all of these out upload them, get captions done or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, well, these are mostly done. Let me just let them sit in their project file until I have the rest of the footage and then go back and finish them.
Sure.
But yeah, the first one was done like 2 weeks before or something. I just did it on a weekend and said, well, I'm just not taking days off. I'm just working through the weekend. And then the other one I got, mostly in shape. It still needed a little bit of work, but it was more or less there by Sunday or something. And then I had the rest of the week to do, the other 2 videos.
Which is a much more manageable load.
Yeah, much more manageable. Still a bit, but manageable.
Yeah.
These short ones are fine because you just cut them up and they are what they are.
Yeah, you were way ahead on most of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised how the footage came out because we were fucking blind.
Right.
Yeah.
You can really tell in the wide shot. Like I mentioned, this was out on the slab where the warehouse currently exists. And it was like the middle of the day. So this bright white concrete slab was just blinding everybody.
Yeah, like I had my viewfinder just like my eyeball like inside my viewfinder and I had no idea what I was seeing.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the production of these last month, but yeah, I kind of had my shirt over my head as a hood, but then I also wrapped it around the bottom so that way it would block the light bouncing up from the ground.
Okay.
Just to kind of have like a little zone of darkness.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something weird happened with the wide shot on that because it was like it wasn't as sharp as the rest of them, and I wonder if that's because we had the aperture stop so far down that it started getting soft.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't think it was out of focus necessarily.
Yeah, I thought the aperture had been so high that it was a super wide focal length or super wide focal range.
So that's true, but every lens has like a sweet spot of sharpness. And as you open it up more, it gets softer on the edges. And as you close it down more, it gets softer on the edges.
Oh, interesting.
So a lot of lenses, it's like f8.0 or something.
Okay.
Like 8 to 12, where it's like optimal sharpness.
Sorry to giggle, but my girlfriend, her dad, he's an old school videographer, photographer. And anytime she is like setting up stuff or doing her own photography, because she has like this really nice camera and she really knows what she's doing. And he's like, honey, F8 and shoot straight. Like that's his mantra. F8 and shoot straight.
Well, now we know why.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that was part of it though. The 4K footage, I don't know if it's just because we're now in a 4K workflow or what, but I mean, I feel like I'm going to say this and it's going to sound very obvious, but blowing up the 4K footage, I don't know. I think there is a lot of flexibility to it, and maybe it's because I've gotten used to it, but I don't know that it always is great.
What do you mean?
Or see, this is the thing I said just now.
Okay.
No, like when we were in the old 1080 workflow, right? You had the 4K footage, and you had a ton of flexibility because you weren't really losing anything. But I don't know. I don't even exactly know where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's 4 times larger.
Well, is that right? No, it's not. Is that right?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
Nobody tell Bryce.
4K is 1080, 2 across, 2 up.
Okay. Well, in any case, it's
unless you're talking what is
Cinema
it?
4K?
UHD 4K.
Well,
which is like taller, I think. I don't know. There's a billion different formats.
Yeah, there's differences because there's Cinema 4K and there's UHD.
Cinema 4K is slightly
wider. It's wider, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's shorter. It's one of the two things.
Yeah.
Captain Dis recently did a fun video about frame rates. Not frame rates, resolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in any case, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just because I've been dealing with trying to find a lot of detail out of 4K, and am not able to appreciate how impossible that would have been if they were 1080 streamed.
I definitely feel like with 4K footage, it's easier to tell when something's out of focus. It's more apparent.
Okay.
And so I'm noticing a lot more of like, oh, this is not in focus. And it's something that, you notice when it's like super out of focus in 1080, but when you've got it like really blown up, you're like, oh, not even close on this one.
Yeah.
Which is why I've stopped using focus peaking.
Really?
Turn it off because there's a flaw in it where when we were doing the mirror signaling video, right?
Sure.
I had the 16 millimeter wide camera and we were out by the pond and the pond was all dried up and everything. And I was focused on Brian and you'll notice in that episode, I cut to that shot maybe once or twice because it was completely out of focus, but focus peaking told me I was in focus because I would be willing to bet that it probably works. I don't know exactly how it works, but I'd be willing to bet it works based off of contrast.
Yeah.
Because the more something is in focus, the more easily it contrasts.
The sharper the contrast is.
Yeah.
Right.
But in this particular shot,
it's not this shot, is it?
No.
Okay.
It was kind of, that was that shot basically. And that shot's
About
out of focus as
319.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was so much light and so much shadow that it just constantly showed everything in focus. And so I couldn't tell when something was in focus or not. So the focus was like a couple feet in front of me, whereas Brian was probably 15 feet in front of me or something.
So do you do the digital zoom in now or what?
So I do the digital zoom in, and I also just find that like just eyeballing it gets me a lot closer than focus peaking did.
It's definitely a lot easier when you use the live viewfinder instead of the actual panel.
Yeah.
But
Which is also why I now am just determined to bring my Atomos monitor to every shoot.
Yeah.
I just use that because then there's absolutely no question. You can completely tell because it's like a 4K display.
Yeah.
So you can completely tell when something is in focus or not.
Yeah. Like I've been bringing it now just because of the not the focus necessarily, but the lighting. Like, because you kept telling me like, no, go darker. I'm like, are you sure? And then you busted out the Ninja. I'm like, damn, okay, there is enough light.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks totally different because the display on the back of the camera only has so many nits, and so you kind of have to look at the histogram and you go like, oh well, this looks like it should work, but if I'm just looking at the display on the back, it doesn't look like it'll work.
Yeah. Though I wonder, like, or at least in terms of this specific shot, if because we shoot a lot of stuff outdoors, and I feel like the tree the tree coverage or catching trees and all the leaves and stuff moving around, like, and does any sort of false positive with that sort of stuff because they're already small details.
Maybe, but I've been noticing it like all over the place, at least with my work. Like when John is editing the Breaking Locks with Wrenches video now, and I noticed there are a number of shots with the camera I was operating where it's like, this is super not in focus. Really? And I know I was using focus peaking during this, and I know I was paying attention to it, which leads me to believe that it was showing that it was in focus when it was not in focus.
Interesting.
So I just kind of like, I don't mind if it's on at the start to kind of get an idea of where focus maybe is, but I then turn it off to double check it. Because I just do not trust it.
Wow. Do you find that it's tending to be ahead? Like, do you? Because one thing that I notice a lot with the focus, because you can kind of tell, you can kind of see the focus plane, as you're adjusting the focus, especially if it's a very specific, very tight focus range, or if the scene has a lot of depth to it. You can kind of actually view the you can just kind of tell it as it's moving in the 3D space. I wonder if the assist, the peaking assist, it shows these little blue dots on the screen where it thinks it's in focus. I wonder if those are, if those tend to like cheat further back, right? Like, like for example, right? If you were doing a silhouette, or if you were doing a straight on shot of my face, right? I mean, obviously you would want to use, this is why people use the eyes to focus, because the eye is the plane of the face. Whereas if you were just using focus assist, it might focus on the silhouette of the head, which would be more in the center of the depth of the head and would be further back. So I wonder if focus assist tends to cause us to focus further back, further than we normally would. I don't know.
I
don't
feel
know
like it probably depends just on the circumstance of the lighting and what the background is and all of that stuff.
Get Panasonic on the phone.
Yep. Right after Adobe.
That's right. Oh God.
And tell Canon we're never calling them back because they're dead.
Oh, poor Canon.
Yeah,
okay.
I miss Canon. They had beautiful cameras back when they existed.
Well, and also, I were talking DSLRs are actual video cameras, right? That's another thing.
Anything Canon has forsaken.
My
us.
5D Mark II is resting in a grave in my closet right now.
Oh, wow.
You know, did I tell you guys this? I went to Cinegear and I went to the Canon booth and I asked them, like, where's all the 4K for your consumers? And they were like, oh, consumers don't really buy 4K cameras. What?
I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. I mean like we would not be consumers.
True,
right?
but when my mom has 4K in her pocket.
Yeah, I was about to say they're putting 4K in phones like left and right now. It's just like it's just the new thing. It's the standard.
But maybe it's better for them to put it in their point and shoots than into big DSLRs is what I'm saying. I don't know. I do not know. I'm just saying.
I'm just asking questions.
All right, let's kind of speed it up here just a little bit here. We also had a different sort of shoot for Modern Rogue.
Yeah,
last
we did.
week. Brent, can you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, so I got it in my mind to do this video about Aztec death whistles, just because they seem cool. And I was like, well, what if we just taught people about how cool these are sometimes?
And if people don't know what an Aztec death whistle is,
it's a whistle. And you blow into it and it makes a noise and it sounds kind of spooky. And yeah, we get into it a bit about the historical background in the video. And this is a very particular video in that it's more researched than most of our videos, and also it is a scripted video, and it is like a whole thing.
And there was a shot list.
Yeah.
There's a shot list and a storyboard and a script and all of that stuff.
Not to put you on the spot, but this guy, Brant, called out action like half a dozen times.
Yeah, mostly because it was insisted of me. But
it was awesome.
It's a scary thing. Not the death whistles. Making a video like this.
yeah, because it was a lot of like shooting at a lot of out of sequence stuff.
Yeah, a lot of out of sequence stuff. A lot of different locations.
Yeah, a ton of setups. So I left a little early because it was last Tuesday, so I had to get ready home for the night attack. To get ready for night attack, and it sounded like you guys got most of the shots done that day, minus some like I guess auxiliary shots.
Not most of the shots. Most of the shots that were required in the warehouse space.
Okay.
So there's still like half the video left to shoot.
Oh really? Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Oh okay.
So quite a bit. It'll need like basically a full shoot day just to wrap up.
Okay.
It's a wild thing because most of our Modern Rogue videos they're pretty streamlined for bulk. Like we shoot in bulk. Optimally we'll get like 4 videos done in a day. Usually we get 2 to 3. And a lot of times it's set up in such a way that it's like, okay, there's a thing that we know that should work, so we'll set up cameras in these specific spots, and they'll mostly stay in those spots for most of the video. Most of the lighting won't change, and it's all like improv. Brian and Jason make funny jokes, and either they get it to work or they don't, and we learn something in the process.
Yeah, it is closer to a studio approach to shooting rather than a film approach to shooting. Right?
Yeah.
We shoot a lot of multi-camera, and we try to keep it to as few location setups as we can because we can. They're not live to tape, but they have that. They're not doing takes. They're not reading from a script normally. So
yeah, and this reminds me a lot of working on short films, which I haven't done in a very long time. And it's a lot of me going, okay, I hope this works. This seems on paper like it should fit together to be a video, but I won't really know until I see it. And And there's definitely a lot of me sitting there going like, okay, I don't know if this is working. And I don't want to waste everybody's time on this agonizing, grueling shoot day.
Sure.
And so it's a thing where I'm sure once like everything gets put together, and I've already started working on the edit a little bit, it'll click and it'll make sense, and it'll be like, here it is. Got it. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
But right now it's just like loose footage.
Just hope it works.
And it's like, okay.
We talked about this on this. I swear we had to have talked about this because I also did. I was mentioning to John about I had done a scripted thing for the penmanship skit where I actually wrote a basic script and some storyboards for that, and it was a very similar thing in terms of like. It was because it was mostly just me that day. David and Brian were on screen. Jacob was on screen a little bit there too. But it was mostly me kind of doing everything and trying to, flounder my way through it a little bit, I guess, just because, especially because it was supposed to be a comedy or like a funny thing. But so much of it was like, well, what are it's not just shooting it well. It also has to be a good concept, and it has to be delivered well, and it has to be. I don't know. I remember at the end of it. I haven't watched that video since it came out. I should go back and watch it because I just remember when it was done being like, I've seen this too many times. It is not funny to me. I don't know what time that I've laughed ever. Comedy is dead. Here is a sketch that has been asked of me. And so I just remember like the editing process and like working with Brian on notes about it, just feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. And so that's super tough with the scripted thing because it's something we haven't done a lot of before. Certainly not scripting and storyboarding here for these shows. But also because it's like more you can trust that when we do the studio type setup that there's a lot of coverage. We can cover over any blemishes or whatever. But I don't know if it's just because it's a single camera stuff or because, you're not sure how the script is.
Well, yeah, I mean, something that's scripted, it's like putting together a puzzle, and each little piece you're fixing up, you're making just right. You're like, wow, I hope these all fit together now that I've taken all this time to make each individual little, like, I love it.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like being Sherlock Holmes or something.
And I think with experience, it would be something that you could get comfortable with. But I know for me, that was very much just like, well, I'm doing something that no one else is doing and no one asked me to do, but we definitely are going to need it because this is going to be a different type of thing.
See, this is like 50% of my life the last 10 years was these shoots. And granted, there's also been a lot of shoots I've been a part of that it went nowhere fast. Like we finally got it back and something went wrong, something was missing, blah, blah, blah. But there's also a lot of reward where it finally does all come together. And yeah, you do feel like that amazing ninja crime solver, who solved the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the fortunate things about this video is that I'm not slotting it into a typical Friday, publish date.
Really?
Where it's like, if I were, then whatever we got is just whatever is going into it, right? But since I'm working on it over weekends and spare time, and it'll be the kind of thing where I'll be able to put it together at my own pace, and then if something isn't working or if we need to redo a shot or something, I'll have the time to be able to fit that in and then just go get that and make it work. So that's an advantage of that. Although, unfortunately, because it's a lot of Modern Rogue is very detached from fact. It is very much Brian and Jason saying, this is our perspective on this thing,
sure,
and we're not experts on this thing, obviously. Right. So here's just like the thing. Whereas this is researched in a way that I could just get something totally wrong and that would be not great for the video.
His head is on the line.
Sure. I mean, and Jason, you can definitely tell in at least some of the shots that I was there with Jason, like he was definitely in a different like presenter sort of mode, right? Like because you had done so much research on the script before, it was very much like, you know, here I am on the National Geographic Channel, and I'm telling you about this, you know, or I'm leading you on this journey, and so, you know, that's the other thing about kind of having this having the way that they do it, where it's just like, here's what we think we know, and we're going to do some cursory stuff, like, because I know when we did the TV pilots for Scam School, you know, like you can't fuck up on TV with your research very much. Like you can really be in trouble if you get stuff wrong. I think I remember that holding up the show for a little bit because there was like an insurance thing and no one knew who's like I don't know what you would call it, not intellectual property, but like intellectual accuracy insurance, and who would fit the bill for it. I don't remember all the details for that, but it's a significant thing. And like I know Brian's talked about this with hacking the system, is like Nat Geo specifically has very stringent guides for what can be presented as fact, and there's a bit in hacking the system where Jason and Brian say, okay, we're gonna see is it faster to keep changing lanes to go through the flow of traffic, or is it better to stay in one lane and reach your destination? And I think when they shot it, because I think they tried to shoot it for real, whatever the outcome they got was factually different than what the research said. And so despite having done it in a real trial in a certain way, they had to completely frame it as, oh yeah, see, we had it the way that the research says, because Nat Geo is very specific, like, because it's Nat Geo, right? So they have very specific science guidelines on like, look, this is research. You have to present it as honest fact.
It is one of the few cable channels where the name still means something.
Sure. I mean, what's in a name? But yeah. I mean,
as opposed to the history, quote unquote, channel, or the learning channel, quote unquote.
Ghosts are history. Ghosts are part of our history. But I mean, and that's a real thing. But that's my understanding, at least from hearing Brian talk about that shoot 5 years ago, whenever it was. You know, having to get stuff right is very important. So similarly for that narrative thing, you have to have it right, because if this was like a big Hollywood TV show, right? If the research was wrong or unverified, you can't go into a shoot day with a script that's not, you know, you're not certain about.
Well, Brent, on top of that, I just wanted to ask you, was there any moment or series of moments where you began warming up to being sort of kind of officially director?
I feel like most of that shoot was me acting in that role.
Yeah, it definitely was.
And you know, I'm fine and comfortable with that. I think my biggest reluctance is, you know, for me, something that's more emotionally driven narrative stuff is way easier, because I'm just like, oh, this scene makes sense. The things that the characters are doing, it makes sense, and it makes me feel. And this is all stringent upon the facts. It's all based on do these things make sense? And the research out there is very limited on this subject, so it's tough to even know if I got any of it right or not.
Right.
And so I think that was the biggest barrier in the act of directing for me. And then also, you know, we kind of in this particular video, we have sort of like a sort of a B plot that's happening. And it was tough because it was all written 4 months ago or something, when HQ was kind of in a different place. And so it's like, oh, well, I'm going to do these things. And then it's like I hope
that stuff's still there.
Yeah. Oh, we had this whole thing at the pond, and it's like, dude, the pond's filled up. You can't do that. Right. It's like, okay, let's figure out this other thing. And I guess that's a big part of direction is
Problem solving.
putting out small fires and saying, well, we can't do this anymore, so let's make a decision to make something else happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I feel like this is a slightly daunting one to like dip my feet in a little bit.
I will say, like, you were certainly in a role of more control on that shoot, and I think you kept it together very well.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Rick Smith Jr. thing, I just felt like a wreck at the end of that day, just because it was like nonstop with shit. I, wish I had done better like immediately after we were done.
But one of the, at least one of the advantages of directing something like this is we had the script. I knew everything that was going to happen. There were only so many variables, whereas a lot of the standard Scam Nation or Modern Rogue stuff is a lot of, we have this premise, let's see what we can do with this premise, and then adjust as it's happening.
Yeah.
Which can be a much more difficult thing to be authoritative about, and to say, I'm going to make this decision and this is going to happen, because a lot of times you'll make a decision and doesn't matter what decision you made, something else might happen anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, keep an eye out for that eventually.
Yep.
Eventually.
Took us like 5 months to, what month is it now?
It's May. It's the end of May.
Okay, so it took us about 6 months to get the first shoot day down. Let's see how long it'll take the next shoot day.
Oh, I bet it'll be faster than that.
Vulcan32 says Steve Yedlin has a good demo talking about resolution. I think that was actually, he had a demo talking about color theory, which might be what you're thinking about. But either way, it's great. Okay. If anybody's ever interested in color theory or the emulation of film in the digital realm, Steve Yedlin has a phenomenal breakdown on how that stuff works and how people can think about it.
By the way, have you guys...
Yedlin, Yedlin.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys spotted...
Okay, cool.
Have you guys spotted any, like, few comments here and there through Modern Rogue and, I don't know, Scam Nation, like, people... whining about the 24 frames a second?
Oh, every once in a while.
And I'm like, well, we're not doing video games or pornography. Like, why would we?
I'm pretty sure it's people who I'm pretty sure it's people who watch a ton of like Let's Plays and stuff at 60 frames per second,
or vloggers who do that. Yeah.
Some vloggers do that as well. And so they just like are in this little ecosystem of 60 frames per second, and then they burst out and like, what is this? In Modern Rogue, we actually incorporated a lot of like really low frame rate stuff. Like I do a lot of 8 to 12 frame per second type
for graphics,
animations and graphics and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like it's supposed to look choppy sometimes.
I mean, if you have professional video equipment, like you can always do more and better and prettier with 24 frames. That's just how they're built.
Yeah.
Also, technically, if we want to get into like pixel peeping territory,
oh goodness,
if you do 24 frames per second, you get more data in each frame than you do if you do 30 or 60 frames per second.
Yeah,
sure, because the bitrate is second based.
Yeah, and some cameras even cut you off. They're like, oh, we were going to give you the full sensor, but now you're shooting in 30p, so screw you.
Sure.
Really?
And that's the other thing is we already use a high bitrate for this 24 frame. I would not want to see our data set. Someone was asking earlier about how large our 4K files are when it comes to editing, and they're significantly larger than the 1080 stuff. Partially because the resolution's higher, but also partially because we are doing a higher bitrate now.
Only because of the higher bitrate. Resolution doesn't actually affect data size at all.
But the bitrate had to go up with the resolution.
Sure. Every resolution has an optimal bitrate, and the higher resolution you go, the higher the optimal bitrate is. And I think we were probably above the optimal bitrate of 4K when we were doing. Well, actually, our 1080 stuff was pretty low bitrate. I want to say it was
low,
25 megabits per second or something. And now we're doing like
HD. That was a different compression rate or a different compression format.
Sure. But yeah, now we're doing 150 megabits per second on 4K, doing 10-bit color. And I think that's the most compressed format we can do with 10-bit color.
Okay.
You could go as high as, what is the high one? It's like 400 megabits per second or something. The all intra format, which is like apparently a dream to edit with, but just massive file sizes.
Right.
Yeah.
We do use proxies. At least I use proxies.
Yeah.
I mean, the irony is the bigger file sizes might actually be easier to work with.
You mean as far as like editing?
Yeah, as far as like your
playback?
computer handling them. You know, like I still, like you were saying, I work in proxies as well. But
Sure.
it's this weird thing. Like the more compressed footage is, the harder your system has to work with.
Right. Yeah.
It can be, yeah, because a lot of the way that compression techniques work is they'll get keyframes basically where they record the data,
Sure.
and then all of the in between frames they record the movement of pixels.
Sure.
And so it's like the computer has to say, okay, here are all of these movement equations and mathematics that we have to work out to figure out what these in between frames look like. And so the more keyframes you have, the easier it is to work with on the computer.
Yeah.
Which is why all intra is really great to work with, because it's
All keyframes.
Every single one is a keyframe.
Yeah. But it just gets huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think any other stuff about the Modern Rogue shoots? I'm looking forward to that Death Whistle stuff. It really was a fun concept. John and I are in it. Brent's going to be in it. Did you shoot any stuff with you on that day?
No, just some hand stuff that day. But I have not had to deliver lines yet.
Okay.
But I will on shoot day 2.
Yeah, we were there till like 10 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Poor Jason had reservations and had to move them.
Oh no. Oh well.
But
next time.
Yeah.
Next time. A couple last topics here. Night Attack is the comedy show that Brian does. I'm on it. Justin is his co-host. The last week we had a banked episode. It was them talking to C. Robert Cargill, who wrote Doctor Strange and Insidious, and he's their longtime friend. And we've got another banked episode this week with Corey and Martin from Double Toasted. They all recorded this about a month ago, or I guess at the beginning of the month. Justin came into town to shoot to bank a bunch of these episodes, so that he's out in Italy right now on this big vacation with Ashley, his wife. So we did some banked episodes, and I think they're both good. They're both good. They're different types of things, right? They're not like, we don't even play games in them. It's just them talking to each other. I will say on this episode that's coming out tonight, or will have been out by the time that you listen to this podcast probably, they allude to doing a thing at the end of it, and I will say that talks have continued on doing that thing. So we wanted the thing to be ready and confirmed so we could edit the video to say, hey, you can do the thing now. But we're working on doing a thing.
Bringing back afterlife.me.
I think that's probably still up. I bet.
Probably.
I mean, that's the point of it, right? This is
you would hope.
Yeah. But so that's a little bit of a radio tease. Nightattack.tv. Check out the episode with Corey and Martin from Double Toasted on that, because that's a thing, and that will be happening in the next couple of months. So we were like this close to getting it solved, and then Justin went out of town, and Justin's the guy who does that thing. So we'll have more to talk about probably on the next episode of Night Attack. One last thing about Night Attack is our friends over at DrunkKidsGaming, Curly and Kaz, were on Night Attack right before we did banked episodes, and it was fun. It very much felt a little bit like an old school kind of like NSFW show episode, because there was like Skype issues getting the guys on the line, and there was a little bit of like talking over each other, and like some like kind of weird awkward bits, but it was a very fun episode. And it was cool. It was cool to kind of see them, because Kaz and Curly are like super longtime fans of Brian and the different podcasts and stuff. So But the stuff that they've been doing on their Twitch stuff and having the DKG podcast, it's like a very good example of someone like taking all of the things that the guys always talk about of just like go and do your thing, and then it'll get better over time. I think they're one of the better examples of it. So that's a little bit of a Night Attack thing. All right, Brant.
Yeah.
This is the time of the show. It's not quite off topic yet because
Play the theme song. Nope.
This is your Star Trek corner hour. Yeah. What's the update with Star Trek? Normally,
just real simple this time.
Okay.
I'm going back through TNG. Just like
that was what kicked you off with this, right?
Yeah,
watching TNG. Okay.
And so like I'm doing a real relaxed run through. I'm not pushing 7 to 8 episodes a day anymore. I'm just doing like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling up the Memory Alpha wiki, which is a Star Trek wiki.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at like a bunch of production notes for episodes as I'm watching them.
Oh, do you want to borrow my Blu-ray set?
Maybe.
It's got all the special features.
Yeah.
Ooh, like
yeah, I'll bring that to the to HQ.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like every now and then you catch like a fun behind the scenes story of an episode. Like there's one episode I was watching and I scrolled down and it was like, oh yeah, Will Wheaton sometimes talks about the day that they filmed this episode, he met William Shatner for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I pulled up the video of him telling the story and it's like this 15-minute long thing. It's a great story. And then watching the episode and I'm like, this is the scene that happened 5 minutes after he met William Shatner.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And you just know he was super fucked up about it. And you can kind of see him like pushing it off a little bit.
In fairness, though, Will Wheaton can't really act like he's never been able to. That's
Ooh,
sure. Okay. That's fine.
Will Wheaton shade.
An enunciation does not an actor make.
Ooh, okay.
But it's really fun to see all of these things and to hear about. A lot of times they'll have little notes about something that a writer or director said about that episode and how it evolved over the course of events. So it's just nice to fill in the knowledge of that episode and kind of how it was perceived and how it was made and all that stuff. Yeah. It's really fun. And
I was having a good time doing that with Lost, which I'm about to get back on. Just like following the wiki and trying to do it sparingly because the wiki is obviously written after the show was done. Right. But seeing like, oh yeah, there's like either goof 'em ups or trivia or, they have this whole long list of like running themes in the show. So like, here's an example of numbers and black and white and death and stuff. So like having that like enhanced experience is a really cool, different way to take something in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially like Lost. I think they did like an ARG or something.
They did like 3 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like these days, you're totally detached from that cultural milieu or that zeitgeist that was happening.
Right.
So having some supplementary information to kind of fill in those gaps, I'm sure helps a lot. Yeah. Also, I guess this is tangentially related. I found I mentioned to you guys the other day. I found a YouTube channel that is just weird one-off Star Trek things. Like
like Star Trek Out of Context or something?
No, like the other day I watched like an 8-minute video that was Riker. He was hosting some marathon thing that was like the fan submitted top best episodes, and so it's just all these clips of him like introducing
just
these
a promotional
episodes.
Thing. Oh my gosh.
And so it's a bunch of here's this interview from a local news channel with Kate Mulgrew, the lady captain from Voyager.
Bishop.
Mulgrew.
I'm gonna say Mulgrew.
Okay.
I don't. She's in Orange Is the New Black.
Yeah, she's.
Oh,
great.
is she?
She's the red.
Yeah.
The Russian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kate Mulgrew. Yeah.
Mulgrew. Okay.
All right. I got it.
Oh, that is her. Hey,
That's awesome.
I've seen that face.
And so it's just like a one-off local news channel interview with her talking about like, oh, so what are we gonna see on this season of Voyager? And it's also, you know, it'll be like, okay, here's this 90-second like in-house teaser for this upcoming episode of Star Trek, and then here's the 30-second version of it. Here's the 15-second version of it. And here's this one thing that only aired once.
That's
and it's
cool.
like a bunch of like these weird little oddities of Star Trek history.
I mean,
guess.
the cataloging of that show, like, I mean, and it started with Roddenberry. Like, I don't know if you saw they released like a bunch of the excess B-roll from the vault. And when it says the vault, like Gene Roddenberry saved all the cutting room floor stuff.
Oh, really?
Like anything that landed, he would put away in a tin. And eventually it ended up with Rod Roddenberry from his mom in their basement. They had just shelves and shelves and shelves of all these tins of 35 millimeter.
Wow.
And so he like grabbed all this warehouse full of stuff, and he was like calling all these colleges like, hey, like, can your film students, would they be excited about like, and they're like, what do you mean 35 millimeter? He's like, you know, like the film, like we can't look at that stuff.
Sure.
Like we don't have anything that can process that.
Sure.
And so he had to hire some professionals, the wife and husband couple who do everything Star Trek. They got it all together and digitized everything.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, man, especially like especially when it comes to like big budget productions like that, so much stuff just gets lost and thrown away. Like we were talking about the Lost and like the Lost Wiki and the Lost ARGs, but like the wiki that I'm looking at was actually active when the show was running.
Okay.
But also, I don't know whether it's just because of the way that the show ended and people's reactions to it or what, but like the ARGs are not fully documented. Like there's a lot of stuff, like because a lot of it was like websites and stuff, and those websites are down, or files. Like they published an actual book from a character in the show, and a lot of the stuff is gone, or some of that stuff is written in the present tense, like the next phase of we'll find out about the next phase of this thing on someday, and it's kind of a shame that stuff is lost and not archived as well.
Speak.
I mean, we've lost footage.
Sure. I mean, it happens when there's like production stuff, but like we also have like first pass edits, which like are a sort of archival of trying to keep some of that stuff available and make it accessible to people in a certain way. But like you think of like games is especially a big one where they'd finish a game and just delete everything.
Or even just like versions of games that get lost after patches and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big debate right now in the archival community of games because these rare cartridges that have never been dumped before will sell for thousands of dollars on eBay or any auction site, and the owners will buy them to make sure that they don't get dumped because that's the value of it. It's a commodity. It's a valuable commodity, and if they dump it, then it's not worth any. This prototype of a game is not worth anything. But at the same time, these are already old cartridges, and the data on them is, if it's not already starting to degrade, will degrade very soon. And so, what is the value of it if it's completely lost to the world forever? That happens all the time in every medium. But it's great that like that for Star Trek, like all that stuff, even if it's silly promos or one-offs or interviews, like it's cool that stuff kind of found its way somewhere.
Yeah, and they've got this amazing video with the guy who is doing the HD restorations of TNG. And so it shows him in his edit bay, and there's this big TV, and he's like, okay, so here's this roll of film, and he's like scrubbing through it, and he's like, here's the color chart, and here's how they used it, and what that information tells me. And then he shows like notes that were written down for the edit, because I think he had to reconstruct the edit.
Oh, really? Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I guess so.
And so it's like he's got all of the raw film.
Wow.
And
so he must have done
recut it and everything.
The visual effects also, like recomposite those.
Yeah, they had to completely redo the visual effects for TNG because it's all on old computer systems, old hard drives.
Old toasters, yeah.
there are even some visual effects that were done on video toasters.
Oh, really? Oh, that's fun.
And so it's like they're like, there's
don't have
nothing
any
here.
toasters left. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, we gotta redo this. I think one of the wiki entries was like a morph effect that was done on a video toaster. Or something like
very
that.
cool. Wow.
But yeah, it also reminds me of they are doing the vanilla version of World of Warcraft.
Sure, Vanilla WoW. Or WoW Classic.
Yeah, and I was reading an article about it, and I just remembered there was this amazing quote where they were talking about people reporting bugs.
Oh,
and
right.
they're like,
they had to put out patch notes that said, these are not bugs. This is how the game was when we stopped supporting it.
we have perfectly replicated the inconsistencies of the original version.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just so delicious. That's so good.
It's very petty, though. It's also very petty, though, but it's good. I love it. There you go. There's your Star Trek Corner Hour.
Yeah.
It was an hour of it.
Plus some.
That going into off-topic stuff, that actually reminds me a little bit of what I did over the weekend. So I don't remember where. It must have been some forum thread. I think I saw a forum thread from someone that was like, why are there no like pro God games anymore or something like that? That's a very weird topic to get into. But one of the things that came up was like, oh, Xenosaga is very much about God and religion. And I thought, man, I haven't thought about Xenosaga in a hot minute. You know, my cousin back when I was a teenager would play it, and so I would remember like watching her play it and being like, oh man, there are a lot of cutscenes, because you would do one thing and you would watch 20 minutes of a cutscene. And so I was like, well, that game's over. I'm sure people have put cuts of it on YouTube. So that's what I did this weekend. I watched the three different. They made 3 Xenosaga games, the 3 different movie cuts of those games on YouTube. And so the first one's like 8 hours. The second one is very bad and it's like 4 hours. And then the third one is very good and it's like 9 hours or something.
Is it like an RPG or something?
Yeah, it's a JRPG.
Okay.
So it's turn-based battles.
Are these text movies?
No, they're like cutscenes. So the first game is especially interesting in this because they do all the cutscenes in engine, so they're not spending a lot of data to do pre-rendered movies. So there's all that 8 hours is all like cinematographed, and like there's like a lot of art and heart and direction in all of that stuff, because they just have to record voice lines for it and lip sync and stuff, which kind of highlights why the second game is so bad. But that's another topic for another time. But I had a really cool time doing that. I just finished up as I was coming here to the studio to record the show, and man, you know how sometimes things are like religious allegories, right? Like, oh, this character is Jesus and this character is the Romans. No, not in Xenosaga. Xenosaga is about Christianity and what happens to Christianity 6,000 years in the future. But also like artifacts of there's. It's very cool because it's a very science fiction story. It is a science fiction story. Okay. But it also exists in a world where Jesus Christ of Nazareth existed and Mary Magdalene existed.
So science fact.
Well, you said science.
Okay.
You said science fiction. So
but it goes into a lot of detail. The wiki goes into a lot of detail. So it's kind of similar to the TNG thing. It's been very fun to read the wiki of people being like, well, yes, Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Jesus was alive, but actually his miracles were performed by these other people, and they had control of the Zohar, the big monument, and then they sent it off to another planet, and it stayed on the planet for 4,000 years. And now everybody wants the thing, but they made the.
It sounds a lot like walking into a room and then realizing that the red yarn is attaching hundreds of thousands of connections, and you're like, what has happened here?
But also, it's good. That's the other thing. Like it's one thing if it's really bad, but it's actually really good because I don't want to have like a lot of nostalgia goggles on for especially just like video games, right? But I think the way that JRPG story writing is today is so formulaic, right? It's very like, all of your characters need to get an act, and you introduce them and they have their trouble, and then they join the group, and then you keep doing that until you have all the people together, and then you do the second act of the story, and then at the end of the thing you find out everything that happened, and then that's the end. That's a very broad way to generalize it, but I do think it's very structured in a very tough way, where like watching Xenosaga, I was like, I have no idea. Like it was so different and like very cool. I don't know. It doesn't feel like cookie cutter the way a lot of that stuff looks today. But it's an interesting experience, because the first 8 hours are like, I mean, a ton of cinematography going on in it, the mixture of video effects and like the cool stuff that they would just do in engine to make this like science fiction world. And then the second game, which is just like this whiplash where like all the characters look different and a bunch of the voice actors changed. And then it goes back to the third game, and the third game's very good. But all along the way, you're like finding out stuff, like you're actually like feeling like you're understanding stuff. So by the end of the game, if you find out that this 7,000-year-old being is talking to God, and everybody thinks God is actually an artificial intelligence, but God is actually a wave energy, and he is around on the collective subconscious, which people have used for the internet, not for like we're letting the dead die, and everyone has a connection between the physical brain and the real numbers plane and the imaginary numbers plane.
The Patriots.
The Patriots. Yes. It is exactly that though, right? Like it's building a universe, the Metal Gear Solid thing, where it's building this big dumb science fiction universe, but they also like kind of land it. And they kind of land a thing where you're trying to kill God and you don't know if you're the right person. Because the other thing is it's definitely like a hero's tale, right? It's like you're following this group of people and you pretty much agree with what they're doing and the troubles that they're going through. But even by the end of it, like after you do the last thing that you do, there's like a monologue, or it's a short monologue where it's like, yeah, actually, I kind of understood what that guy was saying, and that probably makes a lot of sense actually. But I cast my die, so it is what it is. But it dives into a lot of like philosophy and psychology stuff in terms of like, oh well, there are humans, but they're also realians who are like birthed like humans, but they don't have consciousness in the same way that humans do.
Wait, how do you spell realians?
REALIANS.
Because
not real aliens. That would be dumb. That would be dumb. But then there's also like cyborgs, right? Like a guy, one of the main characters actually tried to kill himself, but because of the laws in the future, the corporations were allowed to bring him back to life. And then, what if you're a robot? Like, what does consciousness mean if you're a robot? And it kind of tries to have answers for like consciousness in this world. I was not joking when I talked about the real numbers plane, the lower domain, and the imaginary number plane, the upper domain, and how it tries to make sense of all that stuff. And that's what I like about it. It's not realism, but it definitely is like that could be how religion goes.
It commits.
So, it was cool. If you have 20 hours to kill, but also, hey, shorter than playing the game. Much shorter than playing the game. And really, the first and third games, they really go all out with all the voice acting and doing a ton of cutscene stuff. So those YouTube cuts like feel really good. I mean, the first game alone, if the first game had an ending, it would be like, oh, everybody should watch this. I don't know why this isn't fucking Star Wars, because this is like a huge space opera. Anyway, Xenosaga. Nice. What have you guys been up to?
Adventure Time.
Oh yeah.
I recently acquired some Adventure Time for actually one of our co-hosts, Jason. And I figured, well,
you're gonna implicate Jason in your crimes.
Hey, nobody said crime. I said acquired. You guys
Everyone knows the subtext.
You guys, how dare you? But now that I have it, because I'm a nautical
if you bought
pirate.
something, you just say that you purchased it.
I bought it and then let my friend
Nobody's
borrow
ever
it.
said acquired.
So how far into Adventure Time are you now?
I'm like season 5, and I gotta say,
Out of how many seasons? It's like 8 or
10.
9? 10? Okay.
Freaking 10 seasons, which is why it was kind of laughable. Jason handed me a 16 gig flash drive. But anyways, I tried to watch
Put your
it.
DVDs on
To
too.
buy it legally.
I tried to watch it several years ago because, everybody was recommending it or whatever. And me and my friend watched the first episode and immediately stopped watching it because it just...
It's goofy and kind of...
The premiere especially is kind of a totally different thing.
I thought it was going to be nothing but non sequitur equals funny. Like, I don't know if you guys read Jonan Vasquez, Johnny the Homicidal Man, Invader Zim guy.
Oh, okay, sure.
But like the second he's bored with a project, which is usually 5 minutes after he starts a project, he just completely turns into drivel, like, oh, it's funny because it's not funny, which means it's funny, ha ha. And I thought it was going to be that, modern generation like bullshit. But you watch it and everybody, like especially the voice actors, fully commit to their characters. And there kind of is like, I got mostly on board after like a few episodes in, like one of the characters eats something and explodes. And I'm like, oh, damn, there's consequences and things can happen because things happen.
They really seem to set up a large world and stick to it.
Yeah.
Like that's becoming a big thing, right? For these shows where, they're kind of mass producing them, but they're able to realize that, especially with just people streaming stuff nowadays, that they can serialize stuff more and get people more hooked. I mean, Steven Universe does that. Mystery Gravity Falls did that. Korra and Avatar.
Vsauce actually has a great video breaking down how most art has become really more complicated. And he showed a few graphs of television show plot lines and how they've just expanded and expanded. The unique outlier in that is music has become more and more the exact same, because music is more like we've gotten scientific at how good we are at making music, and music usually has similar intention every time you put it on.
Okay.
Whereas like a movie, I want to be scared, I want to laugh, I want to fall in love.
I can see part of that, though. I think there's more aesthetic variety in music than there's ever been, and that will only continue to grow. But I do understand that people use music as like flags for moods or for utility, and those utilities probably aren't changing anytime soon, right?
We've gotten
Driving
really
music,
good at it.
relaxing music, exercise music, any number of
I
utility based.
I use music to control my anxiety a number of times, and specific music works better than other music. But I also think there are really wild concept albums that are super complex throughout that would not have existed 30 years ago or something.
Oh, sure.
But
the all of the digital revolutions, both in music, in film, in television, have blown the doors wide open on the types of things that are getting made and published. Yeah.
But anyway,
Adventure Time. But
Adventure Time. And so I'm 4 or 5 seasons in, and it is really good. So don't give me any spoilers, but it is the funniest, cutest thing. I was talking to my girlfriend about it because she's been watching it forever, and I'm like, I think I am totally the vampire chick.
Oh, Marceline.
I'm totally Marceline, because I'm kind of a loner who sacrifices my own comfort and the comfort of others for the sake of comedy. And I was like, and you are totally Princess Bubblegum because you are the intelligent matriarch who has to deal with idiots. And then she gave me that tiny spoiler. I
won't say it if people haven't seen.
Yeah, but
that's very funny that you reached that conclusion.
Yeah,
that's very good.
So that was funny and cute.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I'm digging the Adventure Time.
Nico,
have you gotten to Marceline Ice King type of episodes?
Oh, a lot of Ice King and several Marceline. I saw the episode where they were literally in not hell but hell for the entire episode, and had to free her from her dad the next episode, and
there's a lot of good stuff there.
And in fact, there was one episode where I'm they were doing the all-female version thing.
Yeah,
and I'm and I was like, ooh, this is really problematic from so many feminist perspectives. And then at the end, of course, it gets revealed that the whole thing was written by the Ice King. And I'm like, that's fucking perfect.
Yeah. Brant?
Fucking Ice King. Yeah, so I've been playing Observation.
So you finished this the other day, right, on stream.
Yes.
Is it that short?
Yeah, so it took me about 7 hours, but
Oh, that's not too bad, actually.
you could probably beat it in like 5.
Okay. That's not too bad because it's not budget, but it's a cheaper game.
Yeah, it was like $12 or something.
Yeah.
What system or
So I played it on PC.
And I think it's on
the
PS4.
Epic Game Store, but yeah, I think it's also PS4.
This is basically you are the operating system of a space shuttle or some sort of space station, and you have to find out what happened. But
Yeah,
you're
the
also
one
the
on
computer.
Mars or
No,
This is in space. Is my understanding. I only watched the quick look thing,
Right.
so it was very good at only showing you the beginning and not knowing everything.
Yeah, so there's this space station out in space. It's doing research. There's multiple arms for different nationalities and stuff. And yeah, you play as the AI unit that is running everything. And there's a lot of like mini games and little puzzles and interacting with people. There's like response system. Mostly you're looking at things through cameras, but there's like an orb that you can use to fly around the ship.
Oh, cool.
And interact with stuff. I've been thinking a lot about Descent lately, the classic PC game Descent, and flying around in the little orb with all of the axes and degrees of motion.
Yeah, that's like the
reminded me of that.
6-axis like dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those games,
Would you call that a classic? Is that old now?
mid 90s. Yeah, that's classic PC gaming.
that's like when you guys were born. Come on.
That's
They must have made someone must have made a spiritual thing.
There
that
was a
I'm thinking of.
Kickstarter recently from the same guys who made the original Descent and Descent 2.
That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking
yes.
of that. Okay, but it's probably the same thing.
It's very similar mechanically.
Yeah.
But the original games were really phenomenal, especially at the time. And yeah, so little bits of it reminded me of that, just with movement. And it's cool. It's very good at atmosphere. It's very good at like giving off good space vibes.
And for like the I don't know, all the like damaged video effect stuff that is a very strong aesthetic right now. I think it uses those effects very well. Like watching the quick look, there's some shot where you see the woman in the spacesuit in this like long shot, and because of they use these different filters on the footage, but I definitely, it took a long time for me to look at that shot and think, was this actually live action? Like because not just because they've distorted it, but they've distorted it in such a way that it looks like you would have done this to real footage to hide up all the digital stuff. And it is all it's all 3D stuff, whatever. Right. But it makes good enough use of that it at least watching that video tricked me into thinking, oh, they might have some live action stuff in here.
Yeah, I think it looks great. And there's a lot of good like I love any story that takes me into space, especially when weird stuff goes on. And this definitely ticks a lot of those boxes. I guess the basic hook, without spoiling too much, is just you're out there in space, you're activated, and you're helping them out with stuff. And there's like a couple little minor things that happen, and then all of a sudden, space station is not where it's supposed to be. And then you have to figure out why it's there.
So you have to get the vessels of
next.
Anima, and you have to put them in the ESs, and you have to go to Zarathustra. Okay, sorry, I've seen the saga stuff. But it's like space anomaly stuff, or not anomaly. That's a very specific term, but weird stuff in space.
A weird thing happens in space, and things get weirder from there.
Very cool.
And yeah, it's like my only main problem is every once in a while you'll like overlook something that you need to do for your objective
because there's like a puzzle element to the game.
Yeah, like there's one part where I had to find part of this schematic to do some puzzle solving, and I just couldn't see it. And it was like right in front of me, and I should have spotted it, but I didn't. And then so I was like, okay, well, let me check this other room. And I ended up exploring the entire space station, not finding it. And then there's a hint system where you can basically say, hey, can you repeat your last command? So that way I know what to do. And they just kept telling me to go back to that room, and I kept going back to that room and I couldn't find it. And then eventually I found it. And it was just like, it was a little bit frustrating getting to that point. And that happened once or twice, but outside of that, it's fine. It is a little goofy though, because you're supposed to be like this really adaptive AI from 10 years in the future or whatever, but you are a human controlling this AI,
right?
In reality. So somebody's like, hey, can you open this door? And then it's like, okay, hold on. Let me change this camera and let's see. To open this door. Okay, hold on. I've got to reference my schematic. Okay.
And but it doesn't like stop time to give you the idea of like computer, operates incredibly fast, right? So but it doesn't like slow time to
and it doesn't really explain that or anything. So it's just like this weird thing. And also there are times where, like you can disobey commands every once in a while.
That was a weird thing, because that's something happened. There's something that happens early on that lets you do that. A very innocuous thing. Yeah. Where it gives you the choice, and it's like, how are you going to give me the choice? I'm the computer.
Yeah, and it doesn't really have like any lasting consequences or anything. It's just kind of a fun little moment sort of thing. Although there was a moment where you do have to open a door to let her get to the other side, because there's an emergency happening over on the other side of the door. And in order to open a door, there's like hatch controls, and you have to synchronize the hatch controls with the AI, and then you can open it or whatever. Before she gets to the door or whatever, to say, hey, can you open the door? I had already explored a bunch of different areas, and I synced the hatch to the AI.
Yeah.
And then so I'm just like sitting there following her, and she gets to the door and she's like, oh, great. You've already synced up to this door. Now open it on the count of 3. I was like, hold on. I've got to get over there.
I'm not ready yet.
And she's like, she counts down and I'm not ready. And she's like, dude, open the door. Open the door. And I'm like, I'm trying. I'm just an AI. I don't know what to do.
Oh, man.
And so that was a little bit frustrating, but kind of funny.
Yeah.
Cool. But generally speaking, I think the game is great, and it's worth the $12.
Observation.
There we go. Well, you know what? I am observing.
Nice.
Is the end of the show. So let's do plugs. Sean, do you have any plugs?
Skeptically Pwned, Twitter, YouTube, mostly YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Brant, do you have any plugs?
Nope. These are real.
Hey, we did it. Gatawag?
Yeah,
Is that how it's said?
Yep.
Not Gato-wag?
Nope. We hear that a lot, and I never really understood it, but
because it sounds like you're going to say gator, but then it doesn't happen.
It does look like gator.
Gator. Yeah. Interesting.
So I'm like Gato-wag.
Gate. Yeah.
For me,
Gato is like.
Yeah, I was familiar with Spanish from an early age.
No habla español, despite
El gato
being from LA.
Nice.
But Twitter. That's GATOWAG. Twitch. I did a couple of streams this month.
Yeah, some editing. You streamed playing Observation. Did you finish Observation in that one stream?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Just straight through.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a game with voice acting, so it's.
And Instagram. Also the Modern Rogue accounts. I run those.
Yeah, Modern Rogue Show.
Yep.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Bricas, BRICAS. You can find me on Instagram at Neshcom, and I run the Scam Nation Show account on Instagram and on Twitter and the Facebook. I haven't used the Facebook as much. I have a podcast, Trending Lemon, trendinglemon.com. We just did a different type of episode last week because we didn't have the Night Attack pre-show or the post-shows. I did a special Not Attack stream, which is just a live stream I try to do when we don't have those things. And so I thought, hey, I'll also make it an episode of the podcast. And it was cool, but it's like an hour long one mic show. It was like just like drained me. It was super difficult. But that's out now, trendinglemon.com. That's every week. This show is called The Bizarre Briefing. You can find more about it at bizarrebriefing.com. You can find old episodes. You can find show notes, time codes, links to all of our good stuff.
Drop the V.
Well, it's the show. Oh, well, look. Bizarrebriefing.com is the website for the Bizarre Briefing. Look, I didn't want to have the in the title or in the URL. Or if you want to watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/scamstuff is where we post this. We record the show at about the end of the month. We try to do the last Tuesday of the month. And we also stream it live on twitch.tv/nightattack. So if you want to catch it live, keep an eye out there. That's where we do it. Until next time, though, bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.